Today we're going to review the best marches to use in the open field in Rise of Kingdoms. Whether you're bringing 5, 6, or 7 marches to smash, this is the best of the best that you can bring. Hello my friends and welcome back. I'm Chisgule Gaming and today's video is sponsored by the makers of Rise of Kingdoms, and what I want to do is review the very best marches to use in the open field and to give you some alternatives. So if you don't have every commander that I'm going to recommend, I'll give you some substitutions that I think are really strong. Now, if you like Rise of Kingdoms guides designed to help you get value and smash your enemies, consider smashing that subscribe button for more videos just like this one in your daily feed. This is a video that I update pretty regularly, and now we're adding the update for both the Sargon and Tariq ibn Ziyad editions, and also the new commanders that are just around the corner, the ranged commanders, and also Heraclius. I'll talk about how I think they're going to influence the open field in Rise of Kingdoms. Of course, the first thing I need to remind you of is the fact that equipment is really very much the bottleneck here to what it is you're going to do with your open field. You need to determine very early on how many infantry marches you want, how many cavalry marches you want, and how many archer marches you want. Because once you start to make legendary equipment, good news, bad news. Good news, it's powerful. Bad news, you can't undo it without suffering a 50% cost. And that is hundreds, if not thousands of dollars to dismantle a piece of legendary equipment. So once you really dig in to what it is you're going to do, there's not a lot of flexibility for changing it up. So all that to say, choose wisely. I personally would strongly recommend a blend of troop types so that you can represent whatever's good in the open field. There was once a time where I actually did the math and proved that you could swing a trade 3 to 5,000 sev wounds in your favor if you just focus all your marches on one troop type. But those days are long gone where you could really make a murder ball of one troop type and feel like you had the best of the best. These days, you need to have cavalry, you need to have infantry, you need to have archers. All troop types need to be represented. So I think keeping flexible with what I would call like a 3-2-2. 3 of one troop type, 2 of another, 2 of another, if you go all the way to 7 marches. That is very flexible, lets you bring the best of the best, and is what I would highly recommend that you do. So with all that out of the way, let's go to Tier Maker so we can actually go march by march to show you what you should bring. Here is where we're going to lay out the 5 to 7 marches that you bring in the open field and the ways that you can switch around the commander pairings. And I'll say at the start that we're in kind of an interesting place right now in Rise of Kingdoms. The only marches that are really like dead set, where I would say with 100% certainty this is the 2 combos you run, is actually with cavalry. And the 2 combos you run are Nevsky and Joan paired together like you see there. And also you're going to run XY with William. This is the best that you can do, and there's really no question. That's it. Now, there are alternatives that you can do for your cavalry, like Chandragupta is pretty good if you didn't have William. So I'll put him in here just so you can see kind of what this would look like, but he's better. But I'll float up Minamoto. I said Chandragupta. I'll find him in a minute here. Mehmet is good. Honda is good. There's a bunch of options that you've got. I don't think I'd put Saladin in this early category. Okay, there we go. I found him. Your Nevsky and your Joan, they definitely get paired together, and you put them in that order for KVK. That just is what it is. If you're playing an arc, you could make an argument for switching it around to have the Joan primary. That's not really what this video is about. I'll leave that discussion there. But the XY combo, like you have so many choices for your secondary, William being the best. If I were to actually kind of prioritize these, I might kind of put it like that in that order. Each of those secondaries has a sort of advantage and disadvantage to choosing them. But from here, let's talk about the archers. Now, the archers, you could make an argument that you bring either 1 or 2. It depends on whether or not you want to bring 2 infantry marches for your 5-march murder ball. So if you're only going to bring 1 archer march, I think the answer here is pretty easy. You're going to bring your Boudica Prime, and you're going to pair your Boudica Prime with either Esong or Artemisia, depending on what you're doing with the rest of your murder ball. I personally really like Artemisia's tankiness, 20% defense, 20% health, and there's great synergy with Boudica shrugging off the silence from Artemisia. I like what's happening there. So I'm going to put that as the one archer march you would bring if you're bringing only one. This means that I think it's a really good idea to bring 2 infantry marches. And at this moment in time, what would those 2 infantry marches be? Well, good news, bad news. Good news is that you've probably already invested in Guan and Alex, and that combo is, I think, really strong right now because people aren't hitting Guan. And if they aren't hitting Guan, you can get away with using an Alex, which is really weird. You couldn't, I felt like you couldn't do that before. I always felt like Guan Alex was super squishy. These days, people aren't focusing on Guan. They got scarier things to worry about, like, for example, Sargon with Skippy. Oh, that's scary. That's a scary march. Now, I think that's a really great march for a 5-march murder ball. And by the way, there are alternatives here. Like, for example, you could use CJ as a secondary. You could bring in Leonidas for either Guan Alex or Guan Leonidas, right? There's a lot of really great options if you're going to run 2 infantry marches. There would be your 5-march murder ball with extra options after the second commander for alternatives you could use that I think are not as good, but are still pretty dang good. Now, from here, you might say, well, Chisgule, I actually only want to run 1 infantry march. And if that is true, then we can make a few changes here, okay? And I think, actually, there's a lot of commanders I would just drop down. I'd say if you're bringing only 1 infantry march, it's probably Guan Skippy, okay? And you probably skipped Sargon entirely, which is fine if that's what you've chosen to do. And so if you're going to bring 2 archer marches, what is the second archer march that you bring? And I think that Nebu must be the primary for that combo. So if we place our Nebu, who is the secondary? And there are several options here. One is to just drop down the Esong, and I think that's a great choice that a lot of people make. I recently made a video about Bunny and the marches that he uses, and guess what? He uses Nebu with Esong. You could bring in Tommy, which I've done in the past, and I think that's also really strong. You could also use Cyrus or Gilgamesh. You really do have a lot of choices here for who is the secondary going to be. So if you're running 2 archers, it would be some combination of Boudica and Artemisia and probably Nebu with Esong or Tommy or Cyrus or Gilgamesh. And there would be your best open field marches if you want to run a 5-march murder ball with 2 cavalry, 2 archers, 1 infantry. If you're feeling good about this so far, by the way, do me a huge favor and consider throwing a like on the video. From here, you can go to 6 and 7 marches if you're spending on the KVK technology, and there's some weird things going on with the new commanders coming into the game. And although I don't have their icons here to include in Tier Maker, we've got Babur and Margaret, and I'll use Wafura and Torgny for now as the placeholder to say, hey, you could make ranged marches. Now, I don't think making ranged marches is the plan. We don't know exactly at this moment in time how good those ranged marches are going to be. I think that if you have a farm account, making ranged marches on your farm account to have sit around, buy flags while you play your main could be really powerful, especially if you play on PC and a mobile device at the same time. But at the end of the day, there's still many reasons why siege units are extremely problematic. First of all, there's no optimal way to lose them. So you're going to have a bunch of siege units, and that's power you really can't drop effectively to help your team. For example, there's no good garrison to put your siege into. There's only the best that's available, okay? And that's Xeno with YSS if it's being used. But there's not really a good garrison right now where they've got legendary siege equipment on it, okay? To say, yeah, we're stuffing our siege in this garrison, it's amazing. Maybe that will be a thing moving forward with Heraclius and also with, YSS. Maybe there will be a siege garrison, but what's it going to be meta against? Like, what's it actually meta at stopping? It might be the best siege garrison you can make, but is it good? I don't know. We'll see if that actually is a thing. So I think siege units are still not great to have lots of. So let's forget about siege for now and forget about range combat and just stick to good fundamentals. If you're adding an additional march of infantry, what would that march be? And we'll do this for cavalry and we'll do this for archers as well, so that we get to a 3-2-2 combo. If you're ultimately going to be running 3 marches of infantry, then we started over here we've got Sargon with Skippy, we've got Guan with Alex. Those 2 marches are really good. The additional march of infantry that I would recommend to you is going to be Trajan with Ethelfled. Very easy. This is super easy to do. You only have to max 1 commander, and you're there. Now, there are commanders that are really good that you could consider. Like, for example, Guan with Honda is really good. It's possible that the AoE on Heraclius will be good enough that you could pair with Sargon the Great. Maybe. Okay. What I actually prefer for my Trajan is to run Trajan with Skippy. People talk so poorly of this combo without ever using it. Like, you can make your Trajan trade really positive, and he's also buffing the hell out of your team. Like, I don't know what's not to love about that. People say, oh, but you're wasting your Skippy. No, you're not. He's still on the field. He's really, really good with Trajan. Not a waste at all. But anyways, if you do that, I really like Sargon with CJ. And then you can do Guan with Alex or Guan with Honda. Technically, you could also use Mehmed in this mix. I don't love it because infantry are slow and they don't have any march speed on Mehmed. So I think that is problematic. There's also Tariq ibn Ziyad that I think is a great choice. Probably the choice I'd bump all the way over here like this. Is how I run that. There is also Leonidas you can bring into the mix. The downfall of Leonidas is that he's really, really slow. So there's a lot of ways you could mix this up. You could use Guan Leo and then, you know, Sargon with Alex. But these are the infantry commanders that I'd be playing around with if you want to make 3 infantry marches in your murder ball. Now, if we bring this back to 2 marches, we talk about how you can get to 3 cavalry marches. Again, the way that we run those 2 marches might be like this. We'll bring the Trajan out of the mix for now. I think that Trajan is a really good inclusion. People should plan to include a Trajan, in my opinion. If you are bringing 6 or 7 marches, I think he gets to be really, really good. But if you're in like a B seed kingdom or a C seed kingdom where maybe you're not actually pushing tough endgame fights, you could skip him, and I would understand that. So if what you wanted to do was get to 3 cavalry marches, what would that look like? What would the breakdown of commanders be? So I'll just shove these down a row, and we now have space for that 3rd cavalry march. This is a little bit tricky, and I think you have some options. This is where you might bring in Saladin, and I think Saladin William is really good. XY with Chandra is good. XY with Minamoto is good. XY with also, we'll bring Honda back up, and I think also Mehmed works here. And the reason that Mehmed works nicely here, but not as nicely, in my opinion, with an infantry commander, is that cavalry are just a hell of a lot faster. So you keep your Nevsky Joan together, you keep XY as a primary, and you use Chandra or Mina or Honda or Mehmed, and then you use Saladin William. Now, another way you could cut it to be much more hard-hitting is to bench the Saladin, go Chandra with William, and then probably XY with Honda Tarakatsu, and you'd run it like that. And this is a more punchy way of running the same sort of a thing. Saladin's sort of tanky. Now, he may be getting a museum buff in the coming months. The developers alluded to that. They haven't done it yet. So until that happens, I think this is probably the best way you could run 3 cavalry marches. But for now, if you're only running 2, and what you want to do is run a 3rd archer march for your murder ball, what would that 3rd archer march be? And you have several options here. One thing I'll call attention to is that you could just copy what Bunny's running. I made a video about Bunny. He's 378 million power. Very notorious Rise of Kingdoms player. Card will be up in the top if you want to check that out, but I'll remind you at the end of this video as well. He runs Cyrus with Honda Tarakatsu as his 7 march. Now, this is really powerful. It takes advantage of the fact that Honda brings more troops. Cyrus has lots of damage factors, which benefit from more troops, and Honda has the damage mitigation that Cyrus really lacks. So that's one way to run your 7 marches that will be very similar to what Bunny is doing, and I think that will be worthy of copying. That said, what you could also do if you're running 7 marches is to actually consider running Amanatori and Artemisia together. So to do that, I bring out the Artemisia and the Amanatori as the primary. The huge downfall of this combo is it's so damn slow. Like, it's really effing slow. It's really missing march speed. I will say that for like the 5th or time, okay? To emphasize that I dislike how slow it is, but it is punchy. But if you get caught in combat, you are caught in the combat. Hard to get away. Amonotori, Artemisia, Boudica with Honda, or Cyrus is quite good. And then Nebu with Esong or Tommy or Gilga. This is the way you would run the 7-march murder ball with 3 archers, 2 cavalry, 2 infantry, looking really good here. Alternatively, if you wanted to bring in the Ethelfled, the way that you would do that is you'd slide up those infantry commanders that we have over there and just go boom, Trajan Ethel. Easy. So if you wanted to, have only one sort of true infantry march and then a second will be your Trajan Ethel, I think that would be a reasonable way to go, and I like this configuration. Also, technically speaking, if you were obsessed with Ark of Osiris League, you'd run Trajan Ethel in Ark with all cavalry leadership specialized equipment, which is a little bit weird because when you get to KVK, you're going to have mixed troops in this march. I think it's best to have the mixed troops, and you don't need the march speed as much as you do in Ark, but you could run Trajan Ethel, focus mostly on Cavs, and go Cav stats. I just normally think of it as infantry because I'm an infantry specialist, and the infantry gear is actually pretty good. There is also one other commander we need to talk about, and that is Henry. Henry could be the primary in these archer combos, and he is very strong. He's also really good for swarming a garrison. So if you wanted to bring in Henry as the primary and use any of those other commanders as secondary, I think that would all be super, super reasonable. This, by the way, is the list of all the commanders that didn't quite make the cut. And why is it that they don't make the cut? Either they don't have great debuffs, or they don't have enough march speed, or they don't have enough buffs to be relevant. And a lot of these commanders people think are, good, but I've said repeatedly that if you don't have some powerful effect or extremely high damage, that you become replaceable. And the thing about being high damage is that the developers are always seeming to add more and more damage. So, for example, you've got Herald. Well, Herald doesn't belong in a meta murder ball. He's not doing enough, in my opinion. He doesn't have the buffs. He doesn't have the debuffs. He's just damage, and damage is interchangeable with a commander that does damage plus something else that's useful. For example, Sargon. Damage plus something else that's useful. So these are the commanders that ultimately are a tier below the ones above. I'm not saying there aren't uses for commanders like Attila and Takeda. I'm not saying you can't find some value, but I'm saying in a meta murder ball, they just don't have a spot. This brings us to a final question, which is, should we be thinking about Heraclius ending up in this meta murder ball, or have we landed on what really is the best of the best? Given the information we have about Heraclius now, it's kind of hard to say if he'll make it into a meta murder ball, but I think the answer is probably no. Depending on how much they push his numbers here, maybe, but probably not. And why is that? Although his area of effect damage is good, he is missing march speed, he's missing debuffs, he's missing crazy buffs. Yes, he is applying a shield, and maybe there's synergy with Sargon, but his second skill is giving you health, nothing else when you're in the open field. His third skill is giving you a skill damage boost and shielding, which is nice, but some of that is only when you're garrisoning. And then his fourth skill over here is giving you defense, and then only some stuff if you're garrisoning. So there's just too many skills here that only work when you're garrisoning, and he's missing the march speed, he's missing the debuffs, he's missing the buffs. I think he's not going to be a big part of a meta murder ball, which means I think the combos I shared with you earlier are the best you can do. Of course, you don't have to take my word for it. You could take Bunny's word for it, and his video showcasing his crazy 378 million power account will be in the end screen over here, and I share his meta murder ball and what 7 marches he's using. Alternatively, you could just see it for yourself, and you can see that these are, in fact, the combinations that are being used by players in 1960 and 365 as they slug it out in one of the most watched KVKs. Card will be in the end screen right over here.